Lagos to Nairobi, Dakar to Johannesburg. Africa speaks, Africa leads. You're listening to Left Africa.
Have you ever looked at a computer dashboard that says system operating at 100% efficiency?
Oh, yeah. You see the green light and think everything is fine.
Right, but meanwhile, like, the fan is screaming, the keyboard is burning hot, and the machine is completely frozen.
Just a total meltdown in reality.
Exactly. The metric on the screen tells you everything is absolutely perfect, but your actual lived experience of trying to use that machine is a total disaster.
It is such a frustrating feeling.
It really is. And today, we are taking you into a story where that exact disconnect plays out on a massive national scale.
It is a profound and honestly almost uncomfortable case study in how we measure success globally.
Totally. We are looking at a nation that got a perfect score on its financial dashboard on the exact same weekend. Its streets literally caught fire. Welcome to the deep dive.
The numbers tell this really triumphant story, while reality just completely ignores those numbers.
And to explore this, we are looking at an incredible and frankly jarring contradiction that took place in South Africa. And this all happened over the course of just 3 days in June 2026.
3 days. That is how fast this unfolded.
Yeah, it is wild. Let's unpack this.
To really grasp the scale of this, we need to set the scene in the financial districts on Friday, June 5, 2026.
Right. So what is happening in the markets?
Well, champagne corks were practically popping in boardrooms. Fitch ratings, which, is one of the big three global credit rating agencies that basically dictate how expensive it is for a country to borrow money, they issued a massive announcement.
Oh, wow. What did they announce?
They upgraded South Africa's sovereign credit rating to a BB with a stable outlook.
Which, I mean, if you are just listening to that, it might just sound like a random letter grade.
Yeah, like getting a B- on a test or something.
Exactly. But context is everything here. This was the first credit upgrade for the country in 21 years.
21 years. That is a generation.
It really is. The last time South Africa got an upgrade of any kind from Fitch, the year was 2005.
Wow.
Yeah. Thabo Mbeki was the president. I mean, the first iPhone hadn't even been invented yet.
That really puts it in perspective.
And more importantly for South Africans, 2005 was an era before the massive rolling blackouts even existed.
Right, the power cuts they call load shedding locally.
Exactly. The country had been stuck in what the LeftAfrica dossier calls a junk-adjacent purgatory for over 2 decades.
A long time to be on the financial naughty list.
Right. So this BB rating comes out, and it is essentially the global financial system handing South Africa a golden ticket.
And we have to look closely at the justification for this ticket, because Fitch didn't just hand this out of goodwill.
Yeah, never do.
No, they cited very specific reasons. They pointed to structural reforms in energy and logistics.
Which means what exactly, in plain terms?
It basically means they liked that the government was allowing more private sector participation in electricity, rail, and ports.
Privatization. The markets always love that.
Always. They also praised the political stability under the new Government of National Unity, or GNU.
Right. That was a huge political shift.
It was. It formed after the African National Congress lost its absolute majority in the 2024 elections for the first time since the end of apartheid.
But there was another big reason Fitch gave, right?
Yes. The biggest reason, and this is the phrase that really anchors this whole Left Africa dossier, is prudent fiscal management.
Prudent fiscal management. It sounds so responsible.
It does. Very grown up.
So clean and mathematical, it means the government was successfully shrinking its budget deficit.
Which investors love to see.
But reading through the dossier, I kept thinking about the mechanics of what that actually looks like on the ground for regular people.
It is not pretty.
No. It is like achieving a perfect personal credit score by completely stopping buying groceries. You sell all your furniture and you turn off your own heating in the dead of winter.
That is a brilliant way to frame it.
Because the bank looks at your accounts, sees your debt going down, and thinks, wow, you are incredibly disciplined.
Right, give this person a better interest rate.
Exactly. But meanwhile, your house is completely unlivable. You are freezing and starving.
That analogy hits at the very core of what fiscal consolidation actually means for a nation.
Because it is never just math.
No, not at all. When global analysts applaud prudent fiscal management, they are just looking at spreadsheets.
But the dossier looks at the reality.
Yes, the LeftAfrica dossier breaks down the physical reality of what those numbers represent.
So what did they actually cut?
Well, to get that deficit down, to please international creditors, the South African government had to make severe, localized cuts.
Like what? Give me some examples.
They capped social grants so they couldn't even keep up with inflation.
Ouch.
Yeah. They removed fuel subsidies, and they aggressively trimmed the public wage bill.
I want to pause on those cuts for a second, because for a listener sitting in a highly developed economy, cutting a fuel subsidy might just sound like, I don't know, an annoyance at the gas pump.
Right, paying a few extra bucks to fill up your car.
Exactly. But in an economy with massive spatial inequality, where working class people have to travel huge distances from townships to city centers just to find work, removing fuel subsidies is devastating.
It changes the entire math of survival.
It makes it exponentially more expensive for everyday people to simply get to their jobs.
Not to mention how it drives up the cost of transporting food.
Absolutely. So global capital is applauding because the government stopped spending money. But the government achieved that by pulling the financial floor out from under its most vulnerable people.
Precisely. The dossier argues that when a government drastically shrinks its footprint to satisfy international lenders, it doesn't just save money.
It actively withdraws from providing a social safety net.
Right. And when the state pulls away its safety net to balance the books, it creates a dangerous, desperate vacuum.
And we saw exactly what rushes in to fill that vacuum just 48 hours later.
It happened so fast.
It really did. We go from Friday, June 5, with the financial markets celebrating, to Sunday, June 7, 2026.
A completely different scene.
While the global capital class was applauding the government of national unity, South African townships were erupting.
Erupting into intense, horrific xenophobic violence targeting foreign nationals.
The contrast could not be more stark.
Within 2 days of this supposed triumph of fiscal discipline, you have a society visibly fracturing at the street level.
And the details in the dossier are incredibly grim. It really shows the sheer scale of the fallout.
It was not just a minor protest.
No, this wasn't just an angry protest. Mozambican nationals were killed.
The violence was lethal.
It was. And the situation became so volatile that the Ghanaian High Commission had to officially register over 800 of its citizens for emergency evacuation.
800 people, just think about that.
Imagine 800 people having to flee their homes, their businesses, and their livelihoods in a matter of hours.
It is terrifying.
And at the center of this eruption is a vigilante movement called Operation Dudula.
Dudula translates from Zulu to push back.
Push back, wow.
Yeah, and they had been active for a few years, running localized anti-migrant operations.
But something changed in 2026.
Exactly. In mid-2026, right around the time of this credit upgrade, the dossier notes that this violence escalated dramatically. It shifted from sporadic, street-level intimidation to large-scale, highly organized attacks.
Oh, man.
Foreign-owned shops were being systematically looted, and homes were being destroyed.
What's really jarring is how disconnected these two events seem if you are just casually watching the evening news.
Right, you see them as completely separate items.
Yeah, you get a positive financial story in the business segment and then a tragic crime or migration story in the local news segment.
But LeftAfrica sees a direct link.
They do. They fiercely argue that this violence is not a separate issue. They frame it at its core as an austerity crisis.
What's fascinating here is how the dossier breaks down the underlying economics to bridge those two stories.
Okay, let's hear the economic breakdown.
Let's look at the context Fitch wasn't measuring. At this exact moment in 2026, South Africa has a staggering official unemployment rate of around 33%.
33%, that is astronomical.
And if you look at youth unemployment, it's hovering near 60%.
60% of young people without jobs.
Yeah. And they also have a Gini coefficient of 0.63.
For those who might not be familiar with that metric, let's break that down.
Please do.
The Gini coefficient measures wealth inequality. A score of 0 represents perfect equality, where everyone has the exact same amount of money.
And a score of 1.
A score of 1 means a single person owns absolutely everything.
So 0.63 is?
At 0.63, South Africa has the most severe entrenched wealth gap on the entire planet.
The highest in the world.
Yes. A tiny fraction of the population holds almost all the wealth, while the majority struggles to survive.
And the crucial point the dossier makes is that those conditions, the 33% unemployment, the massive inequality, they are absolutely not caused by migrants.
Not at all.
No, the dossier points to decades of deindustrialization massive energy constraints, and the hangover from state capture.
State capture being the systematic, large-scale looting of public institutions and state-owned enterprises by private interests and corrupt officials.
Right, which completely crippled the country's infrastructure for years.
So it's an incredibly deep structural issue.
Exactly. It is a structural impossibility to create enough jobs to absorb that 60% youth unemployment when your government is contractually obligated by international lenders to reduce its fiscal footprint.
Because you can't stimulate massive job growth while simultaneously cutting the budget.
You just can't. But, and this is LeftAfrica's core thesis, when a state fails to deliver basic dignity to its citizens because its hands are tied by austerity, it leaves millions of people desperate.
And when people are desperate, hungry, and angry,
foreign nationals become highly convenient scapegoats.
it is that old, horrific dynamic playing out again.
We've seen it so many times.
When people feel like they are drowning in the ocean and the people in charge aren't throwing a lifeline, they don't attack the people in the boats.
Yeah.
They turn on the people who are in the water right next to them.
That is a heartbreaking way to put it, but it is accurate.
So the Fitch upgrade celebrates the cause, which is the shrinking of the state. And the migration crisis is the devastating effect of that shrinkage.
That is the direct causal link the authors draw.
So the inevitable question becomes, how does the political leadership navigate this?
You are caught right in the middle as a leader.
You really are. On one side, international investors are patting you on the back and giving you a shiny new credit rating.
And on the other side, your streets are on fire, people are dying, and foreign embassies are organizing airlifts.
Here is where it gets really interesting, because we have to look at how President Cyril Ramaphosa actually responded.
Right, his national address.
Yes, he gave a national television address on the evening of June 7th.
And everyone was watching.
The media was framing it as the moment he would finally step up and carry the weight of this crisis.
So what did she say?
The dossier runs through his talking points, and what he chose to focus on is incredibly revealing.
Because he didn't focus on the economy?
No, his solutions were entirely focused on the symptoms of the crisis, not the cause.
Typical crisis management.
He proposed tougher sanctions for companies that employ undocumented workers. He promised enhanced border enforcement.
Law and order talking points.
Exactly. He said the state wouldn't allow anyone to, quote, exploit immigration issues to destabilize the country.
The most glaring aspect of that address is what was completely omitted.
Oh, absolutely.
There is no mention of the structural economic despair driving the violence.
None.
He addresses the presence of the undocumented workers, but he completely ignores the desperate poverty of the citizens attacking them.
And the political reactions across the country the next morning were incredibly fractured.
I can imagine.
You had Action SA, which is a key political player with a tough stance on immigration, calling the address weak and reactionary.
So they wanted a harsher response.
Basically, yeah, they felt it was way too little, way too late to secure the borders.
And what about the DA?
Well, the Democratic Alliance, wait, the DA is actually part of this new Government of National Unity coalition, right?
Yes, they are in the GNU.
How do they navigate slamming their own president's speech?
It creates a fascinating political paradox.
Yeah.
The DA is traditionally a pro-business, free market party.
Right.
They offered a very mixed review. They supported the border enforcement measures because it aligns with the law and order platform.
Sure, that makes sense for them.
But they heavily criticized the president for completely lacking an economic strategy to solve the underlying tension.
So they're trying to have it both ways.
Essentially, they are in the coalition, but they are trying to distance themselves from the social fallout of the coalition's economic policies.
And then you step outside of traditional party politics.
Let's look at civil society.
Right. From civil society, you had a coalition called March and March, and they just flat out dismissed the government's entire plan.
They didn't buy any of it.
Not a word. They called the border enforcement ideas entirely impractical and totally unenforceable given the sheer size of the country and the lack of resources.
So nobody seems satisfied.
No.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the dossier provides a really sharp analysis of why the government's response looked like this.
What's their take?
LeftAfrica argues that this address was purely crisis management, not moral or economic leadership.
Because his hands were tied.
Exactly. The government was fundamentally trapped.
How so?
Well, think about it. In order to actually address the root economic conditions that were fueling the xenophobia, to build housing, to create massive public works programs for jobs, to fix the failing public services.
They would have to spend a ton of money.
A massive amount of money. They would have to radically expand the state's footprint.
But if they do that, they immediately violate the prudent fiscal management that Fitch just rewarded them for.
Exactly.
The moment they announce a massive spending package to fix the townships, that BB-stable outlook turns back into junk status.
That is the invisible cage.
Wow, an invisible cage.
To solve the social eruption, they would have to reverse the very austerity policies that earned them international validation.
So they literally can't win.
They are trapped between the demands of global capital and the literal survival of their own society.
That is a brutal catch-22.
It really is.
It really forces you to zoom out and look at the broader historical arc of the country.
Because this didn't happen in a vacuum.
No, because the dossier draws this devastating, heartbreaking contrast between the promise of 1994 and the reality of 2026.
Yes, 1994 being the dawn of South Africa's democratic era.
The official end of apartheid and the election of Nelson Mandela.
Right.
The liberation promise of 1994 wasn't just the right to vote. It was a promise of prosperity, dignity, and housing for all. It was economic liberation.
And now, 32 years later.
Now, the so-called reward for decades of economic restructuring is a credit upgrade that arrives in the exact same week as horrific violence against fellow Africans.
It is a very dark mirror to hold up.
It is. So what does this all mean? I want to play devil's advocate here and push back a little bit, just based on the macroeconomic constraints the dossier itself lays out.
Please do. Let's stress test the argument.
But from a purely structural standpoint, aren't these financial rules just the reality of global economics? Can a country on the periphery really just ignore credit ratings without its economy collapsing entirely?
It is a fair point.
I mean, if you are a developing country on the periphery of the global market, you desperately need foreign investment. You need to borrow money just to keep the lights on and keep the government functioning.
And need capital.
So isn't austerity sometimes just a mathematical necessity rather than a malicious political choice?
It is the crucial question, and the authors of the LeftAfrica dossier actually anticipate that exact pushback.
Oh, really? How do they handle it?
They plant their flag by outlining 3 core structural truths, and they systematically dismantle the idea that this is just neutral, unavoidable math.
Okay, let's go through them. How do they counter the math argument?
Their first truth is that austerity is never a neutral mathematical exercise.
Okay.
They argue it is always a deliberate policy choice, and fundamentally, it acts as a form of political violence.
Political violence. That is a strong term.
It is. They say, yes, a country absolutely has to balance its books. But how a government chooses to balance those books is where the politics lie.
Give me an example of the choice.
When a government chooses to cut social grants and eliminate fuel subsidies for the poor rather than, say, aggressively raising corporate taxes.
Or implementing wealth tax.
Oh, exactly. Wealth taxes on the richest tier of that 0.63 Gini coefficient. When they do that, they are actively choosing who gets the life raft.
Oh, I see.
They are removing the state from the lives of the most vulnerable to protect capital.
And Fitch doesn't care about that choice.
Right. Fitch doesn't rate social cohesion. They don't measure the human cost of a society losing its safety net.
I see what you were getting at. They are saying the arithmetic might be necessary, but who bears the physical brunt of that arithmetic is a conscious political decision.
Exactly. It changes the framing entirely.
It really does. What is their second structural truth?
The second truth targets the entire concept of the ratings themselves.
The credit rating.
Yes. The dossier argues that credit ratings measure one thing and one thing only: investor confidence.
Not national health.
Nope. A BB rating simply means your government is creditworthy enough to borrow money and pay it back to bondholders.
That is the entire scope of the metric.
That's it. It does absolutely nothing to measure whether your citizens have enough food to eat.
Or whether they can find dignified work.
Or whether they can walk down the street without the fear of vigilante violence.
So we have essentially conflated a metric for international investors with a metric for national success.
Which is incredibly dangerous.
We see the green check mark and assume the computer is running fine, completely ignoring the smoke coming out of the hard drive.
Exactly the disconnect we started with. LeftAfrica argues these two metrics, financial creditworthiness and actual human well-being, have become completely decoupled in the modern global economy.
They just don't align anymore.
And the global ratings industry has absolutely no incentive to reconnect them because their clients are the lenders, not the citizens.
Which brings us to the inevitable breaking point on the streets.
Which is their third structural truth.
Okay, lay it on me.
The dossier argues that the xenophobia is a managed crisis, not an organic, unpredictable one.
Wait, a managed crisis?
Yes. They assert that this violence is the highly predictable, inevitable consequence of a political class that has exhausted its ability to deliver on its foundational promises.
And so they need a distraction.
They desperately need someone else to absorb the public's anger.
Wow.
They don't view a group like Operation Douglas as a spontaneous eruption. They view it as the political logic of austerity playing out at the street level.
Because when the state shrinks, it leaves a void.
It leaves a void of resources. People
Yeah.
fight over the scraps, and the political elite can sit back, point at the borders, and deflect the blame away from their own economic policies.
That is a heavy, heavy synthesis.
It is a lot to take in.
It really forces you to reevaluate how you read the news, regardless of where you live.
Oh, totally.
Because if you accept this dossier's premise, even if you don't agree with all of their political leanings, you really can't unsee the connection.
It changes your perspective completely.
The Fitch upgrade on Friday and the migration crisis on Sunday aren't a coincidence.
They aren't two ships passing in the night.
No, they are the exact same story told through two entirely different lenses. One lens sees a spreadsheet successfully balancing out.
And the other lens sees a township burning down.
And the challenge the dossier lays down is asking us which lens we consider to be the true state of the nation.
It really makes you think about the metrics we use in our own lives, right?
Absolutely. Whether it is the policies in our own countries or even just the dynamics in our workplaces.
Oh, workplace parallels are definitely there.
When a corporation announces a massive efficiency upgrade and their stock price shoots up,
Who is actually paying the price?
right, who is paying the physical or mental price for that success on the factory floor or in the cubicles?
Someone always pays.
When we celebrate a great metric, what human experience is being quietly erased to make that number look so green and healthy on the dashboard?
This raises an important question, and it is the final, truly provocative thought that the dossier leaves its readers with.
Okay, what is the final thought?
It asks us to look at South Africa not as an outlier, but as the ultimate test case for global economics.
Because they played by the rules.
Exactly. South Africa did everything the international creditors asked them to do. They formed the centrist coalition.
They cut the public spending.
They balanced the books. They followed the neoliberal script to the absolute letter.
And they got the exact reward they were promised by that script. The credit upgrade. The golden ticket.
But if following the rules to absolute perfection results in a society that is literally disintegrating from the inside out,
Yeah.
do we blame the country for failing to execute the script properly?
Or do we finally have to admit that the script itself was never written for the people to survive in the first place?
Wow, that brings us right back to where we started.
It really does. The diagnostic dashboard is glowing bright green, but the machine is completely melting down.
The numbers scream success.
But the reality on the ground tells a story of pure survival. It is a lot to process, and it definitely changes how I'll be reading the financial headlines from now on.
You really have to look deeper.
You can't just look at the score. You have to look at who paid for the points. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the LeftAfrica dossier. Keep questioning the metrics, keep looking behind the headlines, and we will catch you next time.